My wife was 8 months pregnant when the contraction started early. It was just after midnight when I rushed her to a small private hospital on the outskirts of town. The place looked older than the photos online. Half the lights in the parking lot were out and the lobby was nearly empty. A tired-looking nurse behind the desk barely glanced at us. "Name?" she asked. "Nancy Carter," I replied. She typed for a few seconds, then nodded. "Take a seat. Someone will come for her." My wife winced as another contraction hit. "How long?" I asked. The nurse shrugged. "Shouldn't be long." We sat down in the waiting room. 10 minutes passed. My wife's contractions were getting closer together. I walked back to the desk. "Can someone please check on her?" The nurse exchanged a glance with another nurse standing nearby. Something about the look made me uneasy. "We're preparing a room," she said. When I returned to my wife, I noticed an elderly couple sitting across from us. The woman kept staring. Finally, she leaned toward me. "First baby?" I nodded. Her expression darkened. "You should leave." I laughed nervously. "What?" "Leave. Now." Before I could ask anything else, a nurse appeared beside us. "Mrs. Carter?" My wife stood with difficulty. The nurse smiled. "I'll take her from here." I started to follow. "Sorry," the nurse said, stepping in front of me. "Only patients beyond this point." "My wife wants me there," I said. "Hospital policy," she replied. My wife looked frightened, but another contraction interrupted her. The nurses quickly guided her through a set of doors. They closed behind her. An hour passed, and then 2. No updates. Every time I asked, I got the same answer. "Everything's fine." By 3 a.m., I was furious. I demanded to see my wife. The receptionist finally disappeared into the back. She returned looking pale. "Sir, are you certain your wife came here tonight?" I stared at her. "What kind of question is that?" She looked at her computer. "We have no patient registered under her name." My blood ran cold. "I signed paperwork." The woman shook her head. "No records." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of the nurse who had taken my wife away. I'd snapped it by accident while texting family. The receptionist's face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "She took my wife." The woman whispered to another employee. Within minutes, security locked the front doors. Police arrived shortly after. The investigation uncovered something horrifying. 3 women posing as nurses had been working inside the hospital for weeks using stolen uniforms and forged credentials. They targeted expectant mothers who arrived during overnight shifts when staffing was low. By dawn, officers found the abandoned van they had used. My wife was inside, alive, terrified. Our daughter was delivered safely later that morning at another hospital. The police never explained exactly what the women planned to do. But months later, during the trial, investigators revealed they had already attempted the same scheme twice before. Both mothers had disappeared. Neither was ever found. I wasn't supposed to be in operating room 6 that night. I was a first-year surgical resident, filling in for another doctor who had called in sick. It was nearly 2 a.m. when an emergency case arrived. A 32-year-old man with severe abdominal pain. The ER suspected a ruptured appendix. The patient was rushed into surgery. Everything seemed routine at first. The attending surgeon, Dr. Mercer, was one of the most respected surgeons in the hospital. The anesthesiologist put the patient under. The nurses prepared the instruments, and the procedure began. Then things started going wrong. "That's strange," Dr. Mercer muttered. The patient's anatomy didn't match the scans. What should have been a straightforward operation suddenly became confusing. The appendix wasn't where it was expected to be. More tissue was exposed, more searching. The operation dragged on. The patient's blood pressure began dropping. "Let's move faster," the anesthesiologist warned. The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. No one spoke unless necessary. Sweat formed on Dr. Mercer's forehead. Then a nurse quietly asked a question that made my stomach turn. "Doctor, is this the right patient?" The room froze. Dr. Mercer looked up. "What?" The nurse was staring at the chart. The patient was transferred from the ER less than 15 minutes before surgery. Nobody moved. The circulating nurse grabbed the paperwork. A horrible silence followed. Then she whispered, "Oh my God." The patient on the table wasn't the man with suspected appendicitis. Two patients had arrived in the ER at nearly the same time. Similar ages, similar names, adjacent beds. During the chaos of the overnight shift, the identification process had failed. We had opened the wrong man. For several seconds, nobody knew what to do. The patient lying on the table had come in for observation after a minor stomach complaint. He hadn't needed surgery at all. The anesthesiologist swore. Dr. Mercer stared into the open incision. "What have we done?" Hospital administrators were called immediately. The operation was halted. The patient was stabilized and transferred to intensive care. But the damage had already been done. He developed complications over the following days: internal bleeding, infection, multiple surgeries. He died 2 weeks later. The hospital publicly described it as a tragic procedural failure. Behind closed doors, investigators found a chain of mistakes stretching across 3 departments: a mislabeled wristband, an exhausted nurse working a double shift, an unread verification form, a surgeon who skipped the final identity check because he trusted the paperwork. No single mistake killed the patient. It took dozens. Months later, I attended the disciplinary hearing. One detail still haunts me. The man regained consciousness briefly before his final surgery. He understood exactly what had happened. His last question wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. He simply looked at the staff gathered around his bed and asked, "If all of you thought I was someone else, how long would it have taken before anybody noticed I was gone?" When I started my nursing placement at St. Anne's Hospital, everyone warned me about the 4th-floor staff room. Not because it was haunted, because of the nurses. The night shift nurses on that floor had a reputation for gossiping about everyone. Patients, doctors, visitors, other staff. They knew every secret before anyone else. At first I thought it was harmless. Then I noticed something strange. The gossip was always about patients who died. It started with Mr. Henderson, an elderly man recovering from pneumonia. During my break, I overheard 2 nurses talking. "He won't make it through the weekend," one said confidently. "Definitely not," the other replied. "I'd be surprised if he lasts until Friday." The man was stable. His chart looked good. Even the doctors expected him to go home within days. He died the next morning. Everyone blamed a sudden cardiac arrest. A week later, it happened again. a middle-aged woman recovering from surgery. I heard the same nurses discussing her over coffee. Room 412? Yeah, she's next. 2 days later, she suffered a fatal stroke. The deaths kept happening, always unexpected, always after the nurses had casually predicted them. At first, I convinced myself it was coincidence. Experienced nurses often recognized warning signs others missed, but then I heard something I wasn't supposed to. One night, I entered the staff room quietly and stopped when I heard voices. How much this time? 20,000. A pause, then laughter. I told you he'd be gone before Monday. My stomach tightened. The conversation stopped when they noticed me. The room fell silent. One of the nurses smiled and asked, You need something? I quickly left. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. $20,000 gone before Monday. It didn't sound like medical talk. The following week, a wealthy businessman was admitted after a minor procedure. His recovery was going perfectly. Then I overheard the nurses again. Room 427, the businessman. 3 days? No longer than that. I decided to check his records. Everything appeared normal until I noticed a medication order entered shortly after midnight. The dosage was unusual, high enough to be dangerous. The order had been approved using a doctor's login, a doctor who had been overseas at a conference all week. I reported it immediately. The hospital launched an investigation. What they uncovered shocked everyone. The nurses weren't predicting deaths. They were causing them. Working with an outside criminal group, they identified patients with large life insurance policies or valuable estates. Through forged records and altered medications, they made deaths appear natural. The gossip wasn't gossip. It was planning. By the time police made arrests, investigators linked the scheme to at least 11 deaths over 4 years. The fourth-floor staff room still exists. The hospital renovated it after the scandal. But every nurse who worked there remembers one detail from the recordings investigators recovered. Whenever the group discussed a patient, they never used names, only dates. The date they expected that patient to die,